stuff, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we produce content, we produce a magazine. We formerly did in-person events, and now we're trying to pivot towards virtual events. But just trying to create space for people to dive into the deeper aspects of their life.
True. Perfect. Perfect. I like that, man. And I guess you pretty much know what I do. For those of you that are on from Stephan's side of things, I love history. I love talking about it. I love telling stories. I've been very, very fortunate to, for the past few months, grow some, put content up on TikTok and grow it out. And I'm lucky because I love telling stories, and pretty much there's like billions of stories to say. So I'm never out of things to talk about, which is really, really cool. But what's interesting right now, though, is the fact that, we're going through a time that most people are like, this is crazy. But what most people don't realize, though, is that quarantines and diseases and all that kind of stuff, they've come and they've hit a lot harder than this. That in the grand scheme of things, COVID, Corona, it's not as bad as stuff that human beings have had to deal with before. I mean, we've had to deal with things that are way, way tougher than this. Just like in our recent history, like literally 100 years ago, the Spanish flu, which was actually not originated in Spain, was way worse than this one. Way higher death rate. It was in the middle of World War I, so there's no quarantining at all. So there's just so much stuff that, like, I think kind of puts things into perspective. That this is tough, but we've dealt with things that are way harder than this before, and we've gotten past it flying colors.
Absolutely. Can we take just one moment, I guess, to go one layer deeper into some of the work that you've created and some of the research you've done, and give some examples of some of the interesting, I guess, bits of history that we haven't paid enough attention to?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I've for my videos, I definitely do a lot of research. I mean, people ask me all the time how long it takes me to do a video, and it could be anything from literally 5 or 10 minutes. Those are like the best. Some videos take me up to like an hour to do, and the video, as you probably know on TikTok, is a minute. So it takes me like an hour to bring it down to like a minute of stuff. But I've been like super fortunate, man, because I love doing it. I love finding the really most interesting parts of a story and blasting it out. And the great thing about TikTok is that if you come out with good stuff, the algorithm works for you.
Right.
So like, I mean, if I talk about the first time I ever put out a video, I don't know, have I talked about this with you, Stephan?
No, go for it.
No? Okay, so it was
it's only you and I in here anyways, so
exactly,
it's like a private conversation.
Between me and you.
Yeah.
Man, it was crazy. First off, I didn't really care about TikTok at all. What I wanted to do, as you know, I'm an actor, so I act in like some movies, TV shows, stuff like that. And I wanted to build my Instagram feed. Well, I don't know what to do. I can't go outside and just take pictures all day.
Right.
So I was like, what can I do? And I was on so much caffeine, and it was 1 in the morning, and I went to take a shower because I was just like shaking from the caffeine. I was like, I want to do something. So what I did is I was like, you know what? TikTok has this green screen feature where I can put like something behind me and just talk, like say a story. I was like, why don't I try doing that? And I knew the story of this guy that basically stopped World War III from happening. Legit, if it weren't for him, America would have been nuked. Okay, it's crazy. So I was like, that's perfect. Let me do a video about that. So I did it. Whatever, it's a 2-part video. I did part 1, okay, and then I uploaded it. And all I wanted to do was save them and then put them to Instagram. I did part 1, uploaded it. By the time I finished part 2, which was like, I don't know, an hour later, it already had like thousands of views on part 1. I was like, What the heck is going on? How the hell did that happen? I don't even have one follower. All of a sudden I had like 100 followers. I was like, this is bonkers. So I got so excited, bro. I stayed up until like 10 a.m. that night, like literally 9 hours straight making videos. So that's kind of how that whole thing started.
I love it.
Yeah, man, like it was crazy. In terms of stories that people don't really, I mean, something that relates to people right now is really, plagues and what we've dealt with in the past. And one of the most recent ones I think would be the Spanish flu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thing about the Spanish flu is it didn't originate in Spain. I kind of talked about that. So when the Spanish flu came out, it was in World War I, okay? America got hit hard, England got hit hard, Germany got hit hard, France, all these countries got hit hard, but they were all in the middle of the war. And if they were to start saying in the news that their soldiers are getting sick, then it's going to drop the morale, right?
Right.
So obviously, it's not going to. It wouldn't work so well for the country and patriotism, all that kind of stuff. So no one talked about it. They hushed it up in the media. But Spain was neutral, so Spain started releasing it in their newspapers, and people thought this flu came from Spain because they were the first people to ever talk about it.
Right.
So that was really it's kind of a crazy story. And the crazy thing about that too is it killed like between 50 to 100 million people. Most of them between 20 and 40 years old.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
This feels like a good point to get deeper into this. If you were to take a moment and synthesize all the disparate stories that you've picked up in different eras and in different occasions, what would you say we can draw from history that helps us, I guess, frame our thinking about this time or our approach to it?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, so like, you've seen a lot of different eras and seen how human beings and the human condition reacts to different eras and crises and issues at a global and international scale. What would you say if you could extract it all and put it into a neat, bite-sized, digestible bit of insight? What would you say we can draw from that to learn about how we can deal with this crisis right now?
Resilience, bro. If I had to put it into one word, it's resilience and adaptability.
Okay.
100%. Human beings are the most resilient and adaptable species on the planet. It's freaking crazy. The stuff that we've dealt with, bro, like bubonic plague killed off half of Europe. But if you go and look at Europe now, it's perfectly fine. We've been able to adapt and been resilient through all that kind of stuff. And bubonic plague was not only a much worse plague, it was also a much nastier one. People got black boils on their bodies that would pop, and people, it was, if you touch the clothes of someone that had it, you would get it. And then there was a 50% chance or 70% chance that you would die. Pretty sure it was that high. So the fact that we've been able to even get that far is crazy, crazy, crazy. But yeah, I guess if I were to boil all these lessons down to one thing, is resilience and opportunity. Because in times like this, there's so much opportunity.
Yes.
Right? After 2008, when the economy crashed, people became millionaires from that. Not from knowing it was going to crash, but from using that crash to their advantage and buying into stocks and not giving into the fear. Same thing now. The stock market is amazing right now. Everything's on sale. Imagine you go to Gucci or whatever, Ferragamo, wherever you're shopping, and they're having an 80% sale.
Yeah.
Right? It's the exact same thing, but on assets.
Yeah.
So opportunity is a really big one right now.
I like this. I want to build on two things. One, the bubonic plague a bit, and the concept of opportunity, because I think creativity and opportunity and execution to some degree is innovation. And I think it's through innovations that the world together and individually moves forward and evolves and is able to field these sort of times. And so one of the stories that I came across in my readings recently was that Newton found the theory of gravity during the bubonic plague, actually, and had to do something similar, like a social isolation. And so going back to your point around opportunity, what do you think are some of the innovations that can come of this time, given the opportunity that's in front of us?
Well, we're so lucky, man, because any other time we've been in quarantine or anything like this in the past, we never had this kind of technology, right? We never had this kind of opportunity. And the fact that we have the world at our fingertips and we're literally stuck at home, it's like that meme that's whenever it was like this meme, it's like the whole thing that when I told myself I wasn't able to start a business or be successful because I didn't have time. It was obviously clearly BS because I'm doing nothing right now. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Like, we have literally the world at our fingertips for the first time ever during quarantine. We have opportunities to do all that kind of stuff. But on top of that, like, we're now seeing what we can use technology for. Schools are all online, albeit it's not perfect. Every single teacher I know, Stephan, every single one hates how they're doing it online. They hate teaching online because they have to keep answering emails. It's like a headache, right? So I have cousins that are teachers and all of them are complaining about it. So that's an opportunity, right?
Sure.
Where people are seeing all this negative stuff, there's like opportunity there. There's like a multitude of opportunity for people that want to jump on it and expand and take it on, you know?
Yeah.
Which is cool because like you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, right? And we're pretty much at home either working or doing nothing, you know?
Yeah.
How lucky are we to even have this kind of time? There's so much, there's pretty much no other time that we're going to be able to do this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're forced at home. We're on Saturday night, we can't go out. Even if we want to go out, we can't.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing Zoom calls with the guys and then we're sleeping in our beds right away.
Yeah. Going back to history, though, we're in this very rare time that is probably unprecedented in sitting in this profound state of the unknown. We literally don't know what's going to happen next, how it's going to go about. We can draw from history, but history is just a tool. It's not the answer. And I think it's fair for me to comment and say that not all histories are created equal either. You know, we're drawing from some histories that have been given the sort of voice and floor predominantly above other histories, and that's all we know to use that tool from, for example. And just to kind of interject the experience of the artist or the artist modality into this, I think creativity serves as a really good asset for exploring the unknown. It's so tied into that which hasn't existed before. And I think if we think about it as an asset in that way, do you think that the artists can play a significant role in shaping how we experience and benefit and harness opportunity in this time?
I don't think there's any better way to remind people what happened or to show people what happened that might not be going through this than with art, different forms of art, right? You know, there's all kinds of media, movies. Hollywood is probably buzzing right now with Corona-filled scripts, all that kind of stuff, right? Art is one of the most, I guess, permanent forms of remembering different things that happened, you know? Something as even, I guess you could say, mundane as like reading a boring history book is still a form of art, albeit not the best kind, I think. But instead of that, you look at a picture like The Last Supper. You know, and that adds permanency to it. It ingrains in people's minds. Right? And I think there's going to be a lot of great art coming out from people that are trying to are trying to put all these emotions and all these things that people are feeling. Because the thing about quarantine is we're feeling a bunch of different things. For some people, it's actually sadness. Maybe they lost a loved one. You know, as sad as it is, I mean, it's so terrible because if you lose someone through Corona, it's like heartbreaking because you can't be there with them. You know, it's one of the saddest things. So art is going to capture that because it's how all these memories are captured. Same thing on the other side of things. It could be a time where people can get to learn about themselves. You know, like I was talking with a friend and, you know, she was saying that this is like her time to just learn about her. I was like, it's perfect. You know, and art can do that as well, right? It can capture all of that. So that kind of stuff is really where I think art is going to play a very, very, very big role. All forms of art. The books that are going to come out of this are going to be good because people are doing nothing except pretty much staying at home and reading. We're going to see some good paintings. I'm actually, even just on TikTok, I'm seeing way more good content. People are at home doing nothing, bro.
Yeah, we're wide open right now. like
Exactly.
in a way that we've never seen before. So I just want to build off of what you're saying, because I think this is a really important space to explore, and that, you know, we often look to the artist to capture the mood or the sentiment of a given era, a time, what we like to call the zeitgeist, for example. So we're expecting artists to be creating things that feel very relevant to what we're experiencing right now. But what I'm super curious is what is this sort of like collective mentality or mindset that might influence the artist? One of the things that has been coming to mind a lot recently is just we've been in an era, I don't know what stage of this era we're in, but we're in an era where individual freedom is like a very important value for us. It's why we're seeing so much in terms of movements, like the feminist movement, the anti-racism movement, you know, rights of all different sorts. What I'm curious to know is if we were to say that the zeitgeist, if we were to pin down the zeitgeist of right now and predict what sort of art might come from there, what are some of the ideas that you think might emerge? I think what we will want to comment on is what sort of individual freedoms are compromised in this time or accelerated and highlighted. For example, the pandemic itself, coronavirus, is attacking different communities in different ways. And they're being serviced in different ways. But, you know, that's one of the negatives. One of the positives is that now I have a forum to relate to you, you being in a different country than me seeing people in a different continent, and I have a connecting bridge in a way that I've never had before. And so what I guess what I want to get to is like, what do you think is the mood in this time that would be really important for the artist to try and capture?
That's a really good question, man. That's a good question, because there's so much.
So much.
There's frustration. There's non-belief, right?
Yes. Yeah. Skepticism.
Yeah, that's the word. That's the word. Skepticism. A lot of skepticism, bro.
Heavy.
And I mean, I don't blame it. I mean, at the end of the day, if you listen to the media, like what did Denzel Washington said? Denzel was like, if you read the newspaper, if you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. If you read the newspapers, you're misinformed, right? And that's what it comes down to, right? And that's the thing about media is that, like, how do you know what to trust? They get paid more the more fear that they show, right? So what do they want? The longer this goes on, the more money they're gonna make, right? I don't know. It's like it's so tough, and like there were studies, like I don't know if we talked about it the other day. There was those antibody studies that showed that maybe they have to see how accurate those studies are, but it showed that maybe the death rate is actually as low as 0.2%. So that kind of got people to think maybe it's like the flu. And once those studies came out, now you see all these protests of people going out. The number of people going out in protests went up from that because they've realized that maybe it's not as bad as people are saying it is. Right. So there's all that kind of stuff that people are thinking about. But that's one side. So frustration is definitely, or skepticism and frustration is one thing for sure. And also people are like losing their jobs and they don't have enough money to feed their families. You know, like it's tough.
Real issue.
I don't know if I could think of one specific thing. That's a really good question, man. I don't know. There's so much stuff. There's mental health is a big thing.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
We talked about mental health a little bit a couple weeks ago when we spoke on the phone, but you know, people aren't used to having so much time in their brains. You know.
Yeah, sitting with themselves.
Exactly, and that meditation could be good. I think in the long term, if you do it long term, it's always good. That's my personal view. But at the same time, some people might not think it's, especially in the short term when you're coming to peace with it, it can get rocky.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's one specific thing. I think there would probably be a few different things that would definitely be portrayed, and a lot of very very good things. I think the art quality is going to be very high. I'm excited to see it. I can't pinpoint it on one thing. I'm not sure.
Sure, and the answer may not come to us until another era within the pandemic era. Something else might change that might shift the mood itself. But just broadening the conversation a bit, I think we have a tendency to focus on the utility of art as being this aesthetic thing, like just purely visual or sensory stimulation of some sort. And history has actually showed us that art has so much more meaning and purpose in the lives of different communities. One is in the historical indigenous community, it's an artifact of ritual and ceremony. It honors ancestry, for example. And in African art, in ancient African art, it's been used as a tool, almost as a technology, as a language. You know, different colors convey different meaning and more of a sentimental education sort of thing. And what I wonder is, can we potentially think about how the art of this time can be moved beyond just its aesthetic appeal? Like, can we think about art as, this is a crazy thought, but I'm going to pose it here. Can we think about art as a form of exchange and barter? Can it be like, can I now give you art instead of money, for example? Or can we think about it as, you know, a way of engaging with other people? Like, typically we'd approach our romantic relationships, for example, with going on dates. What if we went back to like creating art for people? You know, basically broadening it so that it captures where we're at right now and it becomes useful in a new way, in a richer way.
I don't know, Stephan. I don't know. I haven't really thought of anything like that before.
Yeah, I'm throwing wild ideas at you, Chris.
Yeah, that is wild. Damn, like using art as a barter system. And it kind of, it actually is to a degree, right? Like, famous art has a value, and you can use that value instead of money. You know, so that already does exist, right? But I'm trying to think like how that's not for the average person. They're not going to find a piece of art and say, hey, look, take this in exchange for whatever. That's like more higher end stuff typically. That's really interesting.
I guess what I'm also hoping for in saying that, you know, that's just a specific example, but what I'm really hoping for is that in this time, again, we're wide open. It's a unique point in history. Like, can we agitate the human imagination? Can we agitate our individual imaginations so that we move past how things were conventionally? We move past the status quo. I think, you know, I take our role as creators very seriously in bringing about innovative thinking. Like, you know, a piece of painting or a piece of music could inspire a new business idea that isn't related to art, but it broadens our horizons and makes us think about things in new and novel ways. And I think we're in this, again, unique era of like, things can be, we can explore things that we haven't yet before. So anyways, it's very idealistic, but why not? So why not? What else do we have right now?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, the great thing about art is that it sparks creativity. So at the end of the day, like, I've gotten my most creative ideas by reading a book or watching a movie. You know, if you're constantly thinking of something that you want to do, you can be inspired by anything, right? And I think one of the best things about what's going to happen from all this is the fact that artists are not given an opportunity to be inside their heads, where a lot of artists, that's where they thrive, you know? And the stuff that's going to be able to come out is going to spark other creatives and other creators, right? And like, it's like, okay, let's talk about TikTok, for example. One cool thing about TikTok is like, people kind of jump from one idea and then expand it and then expand it, all from one simple idea, right? Like, it's like, there's that thing of people like throwing a stupid example, but people throwing a ping pong ball into like a cup, right? Whatever, beer pong. But like, people have kind of expanded that to literally off pots and pans down their stairs to get to a cup at the bottom, you know? So it's just, I'm saying it's kind of like a snowball effect, that any little thing can actually spark massive, massive creativity, right? That's one example, but COVID is giving people a chance to explore that, because you're at home. You don't have to commute. A lot of kids in high school, or a lot of kids in school, don't even really have class that often. They might have class like once or twice a week, and the rest is just time for them to do work. Bro, I don't know, man. If you and I were in MCA, where we used to go to school, and we had that kind of freedom, I'd be on MSN all day. I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
It's game over.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it. My jump shot would be stupid good, though.
Oh, 100%, bro. 100%.
Stupid good.
That'd be a good opportunity to play ball, for sure.
They're talking Jason Capono, stupid good. One pivot that I want to make, or one arena that I want to explore with you, is just thinking about history as a psychological concept. And so, for example, even the way we've spoken about it today, it's like history is this thing that has happened that you and I are personally removed from. But if we actually think about, especially in something like the COVID-19 era, this is history.
100%.
We are living this moment that we're speaking on right now. We're contributing to history.
100%.
And this history that we're creating right now will be leveraged for people to make sense of future times. And so what I'm curious to hear some thoughts on, or have an exchange on, is how can we stop seeing history as this objective thing that we're not engaged with, and how can we reposition it to be something that we're like involved with and becomes immediate to us?
It's a good question.
Well, I think actually some of the work you do helps make that a reality. Like, you're engaging in history in a way that's meaningful, but are there other ways we can approach that?
Well, one of the big things, honestly, like I'm actually going to take it kind of another way and say that one of the best ways is to just experience in the moment. Because when you're in the present moment, you can kind of see what's going around. Things can slow down, which is huge. You know, it's like when we're playing ball, right? You're playing ball. The more present you are in the moment, things just slow down. Right?
Flow.
You can see things better. Same thing with dealing with history. I mean, we are in the middle of history. People are going to be talking about this exact moment in time, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. 100%. Right? So it's like, it's a very cool opportunity, but if we're not taking a step back to appreciate it for what it is, that, it is a hard time for a lot of people. Yeah, obviously I want to go out, but I think the fact that if you can stay in the moment and appreciate that you're going through something that is like life-changing and world-changing. It's a world-changing event, right?
Yeah, man.
That's when you can, exactly. That's when you can you can feel this kind of stuff. It's the same way with, you know, when people were going through other pandemics in the past, they probably felt kind of similar ways, but a few people were able to take advantage of it, like Newton, for example, like you talked about, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's those people that are going to leave this and gonna basically graduate from quarantine the happiest, because they're the ones that took advantage of it, I think, right? But just so you know, like, I have not taken full advantage, completely straight up. Like, I have had some bad days, right? Yeah,
of course.
But everyone can have bad days every once in a while. But as long as you're trying to average out, so you have more good days than bad days, that's all you can ask for at one point, and then you try to maximize on that, right? But I definitely think that if we're talking about history, you can experience history the best, I think, if you're living in the moment. It's the same thing. Okay, so let's say you go to the pyramids one day, right? If you just look at them and just stay there, you can just imagine how many people were around trying to build them. What was going on. And just by being present, it's kind of like, by being present, you're able to live in the past. It's kind of like a weird concept. It's hard for me to explain, but that's how I feel anytime I go traveling somewhere and I see something that's truly beautiful or awe-inspiring. I just kind of try to get everything to slow down and just think about it, you know? So that's I guess that's definitely one of the things that, that's how I would answer that. Yeah,
it's a brilliant answer. And it's honestly why I think this sort of conversation, this meeting of history and art, for example, is so important, because it's almost as if we're holding two opposing tensions. Like, history is like saying, draw from the past and translate into the present, whereas art is like, fully lean into the present so that it can become the future, for example. And so I guess what I'm curious to know is how can we individually hold those two tensions where we're appreciating what history can teach us and we're making sure not to repeat old mistakes, and also to find inspiration and empowerment with how resilient humans have been through millennia. But also not carrying that too closely or holding that too tightly, and appreciating like we need to be present in this. We are creating the history. We need to be in this moment right now because it's so special. It's so unique. So maybe, answer that from your point of view. How do you balance the two tensions, so to speak?
Well, I think it comes down to two things: being present and being proactive, right? So being present is huge. We talked about that, but also being proactive. Realizing that you're in the moment, and what it means, and what it means can either spark you to do something productive or not. It is what it is. I found that my best days are the ones where I feel productive, right? I found that those lazy days don't make me feel good. And if you're able to be present in the moment, but also be proactive, you're able to take advantage of so much more opportunity that's out there, that this time when you're in your head, in your house, whatever, doing your thing, if you can be proactive and start to think, what am I good at, and how can I use this time to reap the rewards of being good at something once this is all over, right? So I think that's one thing that it's going to come down to.
Yeah, of course. So let's bring this up, I guess, outside of just a conversation between you and me, and think about what are some of the things we can tell the people listening, or start to build, I guess, a lens and framework around with how people can learn from the past and build their ability to create and build skills to create for the future. So what would it look like? What could I start doing today?
To learn history?
To learn history, and also to leverage it so that we can create new things, create new worlds.
Well, first off, you have to watch all my videos, every single one.
Yes, like, subscribe, and comment to his TikTok.
That's it. But I think one of the big things, to be honest, Stephan, is you could read a billion things, right? But it's not, people say knowledge is power. I actually don't think knowledge is power, right? I think knowledge that you use to execute something, that's what makes it powerful.
Applicable knowledge. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
By just learning things. I mean, you could be the smartest person, but you won't, unless your goal is to be super smart and just know a bunch of stuff, that's great. Then that's perfect. But if your goal is to do something with that, to start a business like you and I have, right? To get into a relationship, or to, help your family, stuff like that. It's not just knowledge, it's execution is what matters, right?
Yes.
But the important thing, and the thing that I'm sure you can relate with, is that when I have an idea in my head of some stuff that I want to do with my life, like where I want to go in my life, then I start reading things, watching videos, stuff like that. I'm much more able to relate what I'm seeing to what I actually want to do, So I think if we're going to talk about how people can benefit, and I think the main thing is to have goals and things that you want to do, things you want to accomplish. And so if you have things that you want to do and things that you want to accomplish, then watching my TikTok videos, or even just watching YouTube or reading books, then everything is going to make a lot more sense for what you want to do. Whereas if you don't know where you want to go, or don't know what you want to do, and you're just consuming knowledge, it's great to consume knowledge, but it's really powerful to be able to consume knowledge that you can execute on. So a lot of my videos, for example, I just recently put out a video today, which was actually a pretty powerful video, I thought. And it was about someone named Kevin Hines. Okay, my sister told me about her today, told me about him today. Have you heard of Kevin Hines?
I haven't heard of him.
Okay, so Kevin Hines, he was depressed. He was suicidal, and he actually jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. He, on his way there, he said, he told his dad he loved him at 6 a.m. in the morning, took a bus, crying on the bus to the bridge, was walking through that walkway for 40 minutes, up and down the bridge, crying. And all he wanted was for someone to show that they cared about him. And he just wanted someone to ask if he's okay, but no one said anything. So he just kept looking over the edge and realizing, well, thinking, although he was wrong, he was thinking, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So what he did, he jumped over. He said the exact millisecond that his fingertips left the railing, he felt instant regret. He had just made the worst, biggest mistake of his entire life. Hit the water. Very lucky because he hit the water in a specific way where he didn't die instantly, but he broke his back in a few places. He couldn't move his legs. 70 feet underneath the water. Swam up to the surface. Was bobbing up and down in the water. If you're just using your arms, if you just had that huge fall, your back is broken. You can't do that much. He's bobbing. He can barely breathe. Swallowing salt water. He's about to die. And then he feels an animal underneath him. He starts punching because he thinks it's a shark. He's like, wow, I just literally, now I don't want to die at all. And there's a shark underneath me. He starts punching it. But then he realizes that this animal isn't going away. But then he's also starting to float. He's not moving his arms anymore. He's just floating in the water. He didn't find out until later. People that were up on the bridge that saw him jump, that were looking down, realized it was a sea lion that was holding him up. Someone that was on that bridge that saw him fall, her cousin worked at the Coast Guard. She instantly called her cousin. The Coast Guard went to go pick him up. They brought him to safety. Coast Guard was like, he was like, do you know how many people that we've picked up from the water here? Kevin was like, no, I don't know. I don't want to know. He was like, we have picked up 57 people that were gone. They lost their lives. And one person that was alive, and that was you. So It's crazy. The whole lesson of this, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is I think it was relevant, is because if someone had just asked him, are you okay? Everything would have been better. And it's kind of like what it comes down to. Will that story resonate with everyone? I think a lot of people would like that story. I think it's a good story to hear. And right now, just so you know, like, and for everyone watching, like Kevin Hines now, he goes around, he speaks at events, he's a mental health advocate, really, really, really powerful speaker. But he still goes through depression. He has severe bipolar disorder. He has those kinds of problems. But what he just wants is he wants people to realize that if you're going through depression, people do care. But if you're seeing someone going through it, you should just ask, are you okay? Right? And something like what we're talking about, where can you execute on it? So now you know the story, but one of the things is that now you want to have to execute on it. And it's something so simple, a very simple execution. You see someone crying, walking up and down on a bridge, you might want to ask them if you're okay, right?
Yeah.
And it comes down to just like anything. He said that people were like kind of almost making fun of him when he was crying on the bus, which is obviously not the right way to do it, right?
Right.
So I think that was one of the, I think those are some important things that people have to realize, that knowledge is one thing. Knowing the story is great. But then what are you going to do if you come across a situation? How is this going to change how you react, change how you act, right? So I think knowledge is one thing, it's great. Learning history, great, perfect. But can you execute on it? And that's what I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I love that you're underscoring that point. And that was a powerful story. What it immediately made me think of is, do we have a sort of moral obligation? This is a complete separate conversation, but do we have a moral obligation to act when the information is immediate and powerful and meaningful like that? Like that's something that you can do in a very discreet way to make real significant change in someone's life. Do we have a moral obligation to act on that? But this great story again.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I can turn the question back on myself and just answer it quickly as we wrap up here and take questions. Thank you for everyone listening in on this. What a ridiculous topic to explore with one of my greatest friends. But my response is, again, emphasizing the openness of this moment and thinking about what are these sort of assumptions, the historical assumptions that brought us to who we are today. Like this idea that we formed, this narrative, this story that we formed of ourselves today, what are the embedded assumptions that brought us here? And first ask ourselves, if those assumptions are advantageous? Are they acting in favor of us moving forward? And if the answer is no to any of them, if we can break free, untie ourselves from those assumptions, what are some new avenues that we can explore? And I think that sort of line of thinking, if made tangible and to the point of being able to observe and execute it, I think that sort of exploration could be very meaningful with how we see ourselves, how we see our relationship to each other and to the world, and how we can move about things and collectively be a healthier society. Because I think it's clear, if not now more than ever, that where we're at currently is not the healthiest place. It's not the best place for everyone. It's not the most profitable place for everyone, however you want to define profit. And it's certainly not that sustainable. And so now that we're given this time to like sit down and explore and sit in things, we probably should try and do it and create a new history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%, bro. Couldn't agree more.
I like it. I like it. Let's open up for questions.
Okay, perfect. I think I see like some kind of thing here. What is this? Is this a Q&A thing?
I think so.
Oh yeah, I see there's like a question thing. I don't know, Stephan, do you see this?
I don't see it.
Okay. I'm be honest, I don't have as many questions that are related.
Is it just a bunch of people asking, hey, are you single, Chris? Are you willing to date virtually? Do you prefer Zoom or Google Hangouts?
Oh man, I'm getting like, how was your day? Hi, guess what? Do I know someone?
And how was your day?
What was that?
And how was your day?
It was good. It was good.
Okay.
It was one of those medium days. Kind of productive, kind of not productive. But I had a chance to learn a lot.
So. Shout out to the medium days.
Exactly. Medium days, not good, not bad. It's okay. You want to have some more better ones, but at least it wasn't a bad day. So
yeah,
that's it.
Any questions that could change the very fabric of the nature of humanity that we should solve right here and right now?
I don't know if we have one. Well, actually, we do have a question that would have. If someone asked, "Do we find a cure for Corona?" I would say no, or else this would be a very different situation. Obviously, they have like vaccines that they're working on. It's actually funny, Stephan. Like, I don't know if you know, but you know that people are hating on vaccines. But you know when vaccines first came out, you know how much hate they got? He literally cleared smallpox. His name was Edward Jenner. This guy literally cleared smallpox, which was killing millions of people. And he did it because it's actually a cool story and it's quick, so I can say it quick. He one time when he was a kid, it wasn't called vaccination, it was called variolation, where they would literally cut someone up that had smallpox and give it to you in a cut on your skin, and then you could either 2% of the people died from it, so it wasn't that good, and you were contagious during that time. But then if you lived, you'd be immune to it. So he was getting it, but then he was talking to this girl that was like, no, and he was a kid, and he's talking to this cow farmer, and she was like, no, I don't need to get it. He's like, why? She was like, because I have cowpox. I've had cowpox, so I don't need. People that have cowpox don't get smallpox. He was like, okay. He ended up living like, he went to med school, became a doctor, all this kind of stuff, but that always kept it in his head. And then smallpox was still a problem. And then he came across other people that had caught cowpox, and none of them had it. He was like, all right. So he literally took, he took a sample of cowpox, put it in his gardener's kid, who was 8 years old. So it's questionable, the ethics of it. But he put cowpox in the kid, and then he tried to give the kid smallpox, and the kid did not get smallpox. So he was like, boom. Do you know what the word for cow is in French?
A vac.
Vache, right? And that's where the word vaccination comes from.
Ah.
Yeah. So he turned the name vaccination, and that was it. And he got so much hate because people started doing vaccinations wrong. So people used to get, it's so bad. They would do the sample wrong and cure someone from smallpox, but also give them syphilis by accident because the sample was wrong. And then the problem is that then instead people used to say that the vaccinations give them syphilis.
Right.
You kind of see what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's kind of interesting because it's like you can kind of see that it's actually not. They didn't get syphilis from it. It was because there's a mistake. That's not from the vaccination. So ever since day one of vaccinations, people have hated on vaccinations. But my sister, a month ago or so, she's just curious. She's talking. My mom and my sister are both pharmacists, so they were just chatting like, "What's the most important medicine ever?" And I was like, "I think it's vaccinations. I think vaccinations are super, super important." So it's just interesting that vaccinations have been hated on since literally like day one of vaccinations, but they've also saved more lives than anything else, I think.
Sure. But one thing I love that story brings forward is like misassociation, the power of misassociation, and how meaningful that becomes after you discover that things are improperly aligned or correlations are improperly designated as causations, if that makes sense.
100%.
So, like, this person caught syphilis after taking smallpox vaccination. So they're assuming a cause there.
Exactly.
Just thinking about how many assumptions, going back to what I was saying, how many assumptions exist within our world right now, within the time of COVID-19, that we're thinking are caused, but are just correlated. Like, the only information we have right now suggests that the underlying cause.
Bro, you know what that reminds me of 100%, and it's so relevant? 5G and Corona. Bro, 5G did not cause Corona. 100%. That is not right. I don't know why. The only reason that came up is because 5G just happens to be coming up same time Corona is, right? But you could say 5G caused Corona as much as you could say Corona caused 5G.
Right.
You know, like I was talking to Tony George. Tony George is the one that said that.
Shout out to Tony George.
Straight up, man. Straight up. He doesn't have Instagram, or then he'd be on here. But yeah, man, like Tony George is the one that said, he's like, bro, 5G didn't cause Corona.